The kind of royal drama that could rewrite history. If you thought the tension between Buckingham Palace and the Middletons was just awkward smiles at formal dinners, think again. Things have been bubbling under the surface for years, and now, the whole thing is exploding. Carole Middleton just made a move that sent shockwaves through the monarchy. And Queen Camilla, let's just say she did not see this coming. We're talking about a royal showdown that's been brewing since Kate first stepped into the royal spotlight. You've got Carole, protective, fiercely independent, and completely unwilling to be sidelined. Then there's Camilla, steeped in aristocratic traditions, controlling the palace from behind the scenes. These two have been circling each other for years, playing a game of polite nods and subtle power moves. But Carole? She just flipped the entire board. It all started on a chilly February morning when Carole walked into Buckingham Palace. No fanfare, no press, just a quiet arrival that didn't seem out of place. But what she carried with her, that changed everything. For years she kept quiet, played nice, and stayed in her lane. But not today. Today, she was ready to talk. And here's where things get wild. Carole didn't just walk in and have a chat over tea. Nope. She came with receipts. She pulled out files, yes, actual documents, and laid out financial records that had never seen the light of day. And these weren't just any numbers. They pointed to something huge. We're talking about millions of pounds quietly moving through secret accounts. Not just regular royal investments either, this was deeper. Private bank meetings in Switzerland. Transfers disguised under shell companies. Money being moved so carefully that for years, no one could fully trace it. And guess who was at the center of it? Queen Camilla. Now let's pause here for a second because this isn't just about money. The royal family is built on trust, on the idea that they serve the people, not profit off them. If what Carole was saying was true, this wasn't just a scandal, this was a crisis. Inside that palace room, the reaction was instant. Phones started ringing. Advisors whispered frantically. Some left the room, probably to warn whoever needed to be warned. But the person who didn't move? Camilla. People who've been around her for years say she's a master at keeping her composure. She's handled media storms, royal controversies, and decades of public scrutiny. But this was different. Witnesses said her face went pale. Her usual controlled expression slipped just for a moment. Because Carole wasn't just talking. She had proof. She named the banks. She listed the dates. She described the secret meetings, the transfers, the methods used to keep everything hidden. And the kicker? Some of this money, yes, the same money quietly being tucked away, had a direct impact on royal decisions. Decisions that affected Kate. Decisions that made life harder for the Middletons. And if you think this was just about financial dealings, oh no. This went way beyond that. Carole pointed out something else, something that had been happening behind closed doors for years. The slow but deliberate way the Middletons were being pushed out of royal events. The sudden changes to traditions that kept Kate further away from her family. The charities that quietly lost support when they had Middleton ties. None of it looked like much on its own. But when you put the pieces together, it was a pattern, a power move, and at the center of it, Camilla. And here's where things went from shocking to explosive. Carole wasn't just dropping this information inside the palace. Within hours, the news started leaking. Reports surfaced, experts weighed in, and suddenly everyone, from finance analysts to royal commentators, had something to say. This wasn't just another tabloid rumor. This had real details. And the public? They were watching. Some people saw Carole as a hero, finally standing up against the royal machine. Others thought she was breaking an unspoken rule, exposing palace secrets in a way that could damage the monarchy itself. But no matter which side they were on, everyone agreed on one thing. This was big. Meanwhile, inside Buckingham Palace, chaos erupted. Lawyers were called in. Crisis meetings ran late into the night. The usual ignore and it will go away strategy, not going to work this time. The details were too precise, the claims too serious. Even longtime palace insiders admitted this was different. And Camilla? She vanished from the public eye. No appearances, no statements, nothing. For someone who had spent years rebuilding her image, going from the other woman to Queen of England, this was a disaster. The carefully crafted reputation, the trust she had worked so hard to earn, it was slipping through her fingers. And the worst part? It wasn't just a media storm. This was real. Because once financial experts started digging, more questions popped up. Where else was money being funneled? Who else knew? Could this go beyond Camilla? The possibilities were endless, and none of them were good for the royal family. And Carole? She wasn't backing down. For years, she had watched Kate navigate the pressures of royal life, balancing tradition with her own identity. She had seen the subtle ways the Middletons were kept at arm's length, how decisions were made without them. And now? She was done playing by the rules. This wasn't just about a mother standing up for her daughter. This was about power, about control, about a system that had operated in secrecy for centuries and was now being exposed in the harshest way possible. And as the fallout continued, one thing was certain: Buckingham Palace was in full-blown damage control mode. The royal family had faced scandals before, but this was different. This was internal. This was a war being fought behind palace walls, but with the whole world watching. And for Queen Camilla, the tears weren't just about being exposed. They were about something much bigger. For the first time in her royal life, she wasn't the one pulling the strings. The first real cracks had started years ago, back when Prince George was born in 2013. A royal baby is always a big deal, but George wasn't just any baby. He was a future king. The palace moved fast, setting up strict routines, official royal nannies, and an entire team to handle his care. Everything was planned down to the last detail except for one thing: Carole. She had raised 3 kids of her own. She knew how to handle newborns, late-night feedings, and restless toddlers. And as Kate's mother, she naturally wanted to be involved. But suddenly, every door seemed to close in her face. Royal traditions left little space for a grandmother outside the direct royal bloodline, and insiders whispered that Camilla wasn't exactly fighting to change that. And if you look at what happened next, it's clear this wasn't an accident. Fast forward to 2015, Princess Charlotte's christening. A moment that should have been about family, about unity, about celebrating the birth of the newest royal. But something was off. The Middletons had planned a small, intimate gathering after the ceremony, a chance to just be with their daughter, their grandchildren, their family. Then, at the last minute, plans changed. And not in a small way. Suddenly, royal protocol took over. The guest list shifted. The Middletons found themselves in the background, playing minor roles at their own granddaughter's big day. The whispers inside the palace? They all pointed in the same direction. Camilla's office had a hand in it. Now you might think, okay, royal events are complicated, maybe it wasn't intentional. But if you follow the pattern, it's very intentional. It wasn't just about christenings and birthdays. It was in the little moments. The way palace staff handled invitations, the way schedules changed at the last second, making it harder for Kate's family to visit. The way Carole slowly realized that no matter how hard she tried, she was being sidelined. And then came the real gut punch, Prince Charles's 70th birthday party. Now, Charles turning 70 was a big deal. The royal family put together a grand celebration. Guests flew in from all over, and the champagne flowed. Carole was there, smiling, keeping up appearances. But then she overheard something she wasn't supposed to. Camilla, surrounded by her close friends, wealthy, aristocratic, and very much old money, made a passing comment about new money in a way that didn't need much decoding. It was a direct jab at the Middletons, their business, their success, everything Carole had worked for, and that was when things shifted from cold tolerance to outright hostility. Carole knew she wasn't just dealing with royal traditions. She was dealing with a power play. Every event, every exclusion, every subtle move was about control. And Camilla? She was winning. Then came the pandemic. While most of the country was locked down, something strange was happening behind the palace gates. Some royal family members, let's just say not the Middletons, were still meeting in private. And Camilla? Her influence only grew stronger. By early 2024, there wasn't even an attempt to hide the tension anymore. At Prince Louis's school concert, the writing was on the wall. Camilla and Carole barely acknowledged each other. They stood at opposite ends of the reception, not even pretending to exchange pleasantries. It wasn't just awkward anymore, it was war. And then, Carole had enough. She had been patient. She had played nice. She had stayed quiet while the Middletons were pushed further and further into the background. But when she saw how deep this went, when she realized that Camilla wasn't just influencing royal schedules, but controlling them, using money and power to decide who mattered and who didn't, she made her move. And that's how we got here. The moment she exposed the financial dealings, the monarchy was thrown into full-blown crisis mode. Advisors scrambled, phones didn't stop ringing. World leaders started paying attention, wondering how deep this went. Even European royals were watching closely. King Felipe of Spain, King Carl Gustaf of Sweden, Queen Margrethe of Denmark. The British monarchy wasn't just a national institution, it was global, and cracks in its foundation made everyone nervous. And here's the crazy part. This wasn't just shaking up the royal family, it was hitting everything. Tourism? Numbers dropped. Hotels that relied on royal-themed tours saw cancellations. Even the Buckingham Palace gift shop took a hit because, let's be real, who wants a Queen Camilla souvenir in the middle of a scandal? The financial world? Stock prices dipped for companies closely tied to royal endorsements. Charities linked to Camilla saw a drop in donations. Some board members even quietly resigned, not wanting to be associated with the mess. And inside the palace, the staff was split. Younger workers, especially those who had gotten to know Kate personally, sided with Carole. They saw what was happening. They knew how much she had been pushed aside. The older, more traditional staff. They clung to Camilla, hoping this storm would pass. Then there was William, the future king. Talk about being stuck between a rock and a hard place. On one side, his duty to the monarchy. On the other, his loyalty to his wife and her family. Insiders say he spent hours locked away in his office, making private calls, trying to figure out what to do. Because let's be real, no matter how much damage control the palace tried to do, this wasn't going away. And while all this was happening, Camilla disappeared from public view. No appearances, no statements, just silence. The woman who had spent decades reshaping her public image, from the most hated woman in Britain to queen, was now watching everything unravel. The palace was working overtime to protect her, but the damage was done. The carefully built reputation, the years of effort to win over the public, gone in an instant. But the real warning sign? It came on an otherwise normal Tuesday morning. Camilla sat down for breakfast in the palace dining room, expecting the usual. Staff bustling around, polite conversation, her usual seat waiting for her. Instead, silence. The table where she had always sat, the one where people naturally gathered, was empty. No aides hovering nearby, no morning chatter. Even the staff, who once rushed to serve her tea just the way she liked it, suddenly kept their distance. And that was just the beginning. Her schedule, once packed with royal duties, charity visits, and high-profile engagements, began to empty. At first, it was small things, a request from a charity for another royal to attend instead, a garden party invitation that somehow never arrived. But then came the real blow, her favorite event, the Royal Windsor Horse Show. For 15 years, she had been an honored guest, always given the best seat, always front and center. But this year, a polite message suggested she take a break. That's when reality hit. Her friends, those aristocrats she had wined and dined for years, started slipping away too. The weekend gatherings in grand country estates, suddenly her name was left off the guest list. Ladies who once competed to sit next to her at charity luncheons now had other commitments. The social phone calls, the gossip-filled brunches, the quiet reassurances that she was still in control. Gone. And the worst part? The palace staff noticed. Oh, they were still polite, of course. This was Buckingham Palace, after all. But the warmth? The respect? That invisible thread of deference that once surrounded her? It was unraveling. Her personal chef, the one who knew her favorite dishes by heart, left for another royal. Her longtime secretary quietly requested a transfer to Princess Anne's office. Even her driver of 12 years decided it was time to retire. Now, let's take a second here. Camilla had spent decades fighting for her place in the royal family. She had survived the public hatred after Diana. She had clawed her way up from being Charles's mistress to his wife, then queen consort. And now, in just a matter of months, Carole Middleton had taken all of that away. And it wasn't just inside the palace. The outside world was catching on too. The press had loved Camilla for years. After all, she had gone from being one of Britain's most despised women to being accepted, even respected, as queen. But the moment Carole's accusations hit, the headlines turned. Newspapers that once ran glowing articles about Camilla's grace and charm were suddenly digging into her past. Old scandals re-emerged. Stories of her demanding nature, her temper behind closed doors, her alleged influence over royal affairs. It all resurfaced, and people were paying attention. Her children, Tom Parker Bowles and Laura Lopes, stood by her, but even they felt the impact. Tom lost his long-running food column in the Mail on Sunday. Laura's art gallery saw a noticeable drop in high-profile clients. The scandal wasn't just isolating Camilla, it was spreading to everyone connected to her. Then came Christmas, and this was where things got brutal. The royal Christmas photo is a big deal. It's carefully staged, every placement deliberate. And when the family gathered at Sandringham, Camilla was there, but barely. While Kate and William stood front and center, radiating warmth with their children, Camilla was positioned at the very edge of the frame. It was subtle but so obvious at the same time. The dinner that night? Even worse. She had always been seated near Charles, an unspoken reminder of her importance. But now, a seat farther down the table. Less conversation, less attention. Even her own grandchildren spent the holiday with their other grandmother instead. By early 2025, she barely left her rooms. The palace issued a vague statement about her taking time for private matters, but everyone knew what that meant. She had been sidelined. Her royal work, almost non-existent. She was missing from key events. No speeches, no appearances, nothing. And then came the final, unmistakable sign. The palace was preparing for an important state dinner, a massive event, the kind that demanded perfect protocol. But when the staff set up the grand dining hall, something was missing. Camilla's throne, the one placed beside Charles's for official ceremonies, had been removed. When she asked why, the answer was chillingly simple: protocol changes. And just like that, it was official. She was still technically queen consort, but the message was clear. The power she once held, gone. The influence she fought for, erased. The woman who had spent years climbing to the top of the royal hierarchy was now watching everything slip away. And as Camilla faded into the background, all eyes turned to someone new. Kate Middleton, the woman once dismissed as too common. The outsider who wasn't raised in palaces, who didn't come from an aristocratic lineage. The woman who, for years, had smiled through the quiet insults, the cold shoulders, the battles behind closed doors. But here's where things got interesting. As Camilla disappeared, Kate stepped up. Not with loud declarations or power grabs, no, she did it her way. Subtle, graceful, but impossible to ignore. She started appearing more frequently, not just at charity events but in palace meetings. She took a larger role in discussions about royal finances, long-term planning, and even the monarchy's modernization. Her office, once tucked away, was moved closer to King Charles's. A small detail, maybe, but inside Buckingham Palace everything is symbolic. She and William became more visible, attending events together, their bond stronger than ever. And behind closed doors, insiders whispered that William was relying on Kate more than ever before, seeking her advice on major royal decisions. And here's what made her different. She connected with people. Parents at children's charities noticed how she really listened. Military families saw how she made time for them. She wasn't just shaking hands. She was remembering names, stories, struggles. The royal family, long criticized for feeling distant, suddenly felt human again. Even the way she dressed sent a message. She repeated outfits, mixed affordable brands with high fashion, made it clear she wasn't there to show off. She was there to relate. And the palace? They embraced it. She overhauled the royal family's social media presence, showing more behind-the-scenes moments, offering a real glimpse into life as a modern royal. People loved it. And then there was Carole Middleton. Once dismissed as an outsider, she now had a quiet but undeniable presence. She worked alongside Kate on charity projects, using her business skills to improve palace operations. The same middle-class background that once made her a target? Now it was an asset. She helped shape the very institution that once tried to push her out. By mid-2025, the message was clear. The monarchy had survived its biggest crisis in decades, but it wasn't because of tradition or aristocracy. It was because of Kate, because of Carole, because the woman once seen as an outsider was exactly what the royal family needed. But here's the big question. Is this a new royal order? Can the monarchy, now standing on shaky ground, truly rebuild with Kate leading the way? Or is this just the beginning of another shift, one that could change the British royal family forever? Let us know what you think in the comments below. And if you loved this deep dive into royal drama, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Click the next video on your screen. We promise you won't want to miss it.